Okay, let's unpack this.
Let's do it.
We are wading into one of the murkiest moral swamps humanity has ever faced.
That's a good way to put it.
It's this conflict, right, between the ideal of absolute truth and the reality of necessary deception.
Right. Because we're taught from childhood, I mean, it's deep cultural programming, that lying is just wrong, fundamentally. A clear violation of some core moral contract.
Exactly.
And yet we constantly use language that excuses it or even praises deception in certain contexts.
White lies.
White lies, necessary evils, carefully constructed social fictions. The moral landscape we actually live in looks nothing like the simple, rigid rules we learned in kindergarten.
No, it's messy. It's a highly contextual place.
It is.
And that's what our sources today really tackle head on, not just by looking at the big philosophy, but by looking at the situations that force you, the listener, into a moral corner. We all know these moments. The choice just feels impossible.
Oh, absolutely. And they're so common. I mean, think about the classic one. The friend asking, do I look terrible in this?
Yes.
And they're standing right there, maybe 5 minutes before the biggest job interview of their life.
Yeah, the stakes are high for them.
The stakes are incredibly high. They're already anxious. Their confidence is hanging by a thread. And you see a flaw. Maybe the clothing's unflattering. Maybe the hair's a bit off. Something. But telling the absolute unvarnished truth right there, right now, it could trigger this profound spiral of self-doubt. It could ruin their whole opportunity.
So the truth is actually weaponized by the timing.
Exactly. So what's the greater moral crime? The small lie of reassurance that's designed to preserve their mental state, or the act of causing this gratuitous emotional distress that just derails their whole performance?
That one dilemma just perfectly sets the stage. The clash of kindness versus honesty.
It does.
Then you scale it up. You have the philosophical hammer test, the absolute highest stakes.
The life or death scenario.
The classic.
Yeah.
A violent person comes to your door asking if someone they intend to harm is hiding in your house.
And this just strips away all pretense. It forces a raw choice between two competing moral forces.
There's no gray area there.
None. Do you uphold this abstract philosophical duty to tell the truth, knowing the immediate predictable consequence is catastrophic harm? Or do you prioritize the concrete human imperative to protect innocent life, even if it means you have to utter a deliberate falsehood?
Our intuition just screams to protect life there, doesn't it?
It does. It screams for the protection of life over the protection of language. The moral weight couldn't be heavier.
And then finally, we ground it in the mundane, the everyday, the convenience lie.
Ah, yeah.
We're talking about the low-stakes, self-serving deception that happens, I don't know, hourly across society.
Probably, yeah.
You were late because you didn't manage your time well. But instead of admitting poor planning, you just default to, oh, the traffic was unexpectedly awful.
It's small. It avoids immediate conflict. And it protects your ego from that momentary discomfort of accountability.
So you have these three situations. The kind lie, the protective lie, and the ego lie.
And they highlight the fundamental conflict we're diving into. We're caught between two powerful opposing ideas.
Right.
The first is this strict, duty-based assertion that lying is always wrong, full stop.
Yep.
The second is the more flexible, consequences-based feeling that sometimes lying genuinely feels like the right thing to do, the moral minimum required to preserve life or dignity.
So our mission today is to cut through that noise. We're going to examine the philosophical arguments for both sides, for absolute truth and for situational deception, and deliver actionable insights for you, the learner.
We're trying to find a path through it.
Yeah. We're going to figure out the deep dive's core question. Should we always tell the truth? Or are there cases where lying is not just excusable, but morally justified? Let's start with the foundation.
Okay.
Why do we even think truth is so important to begin with?
What's fascinating here is how deeply human societies, I mean, from the smallest tribal group built on oral promises to the largest modern democracy built on written law, are all built on this initial, almost unquestioned premise that truth is a basic moral duty.
It's just assumed.
It has to be. If you look at the foundations of any successful civilization, the moment communication loses its veracity, the moment shared reality dissolves, the entire social structure just begins to decay.
So this distinction is important. It's not just about being polite, it's structural.
It is.
And the sources outline 4 central arguments for why truth seems always right. And the first one, trust, is it feels like the engine of everything.
It's the engine of all cooperation, economic, social, personal, you name it.
Can you expand on that?
Sure. Think of trust as the fundamental operating system for human interaction. If I can't generally believe what you tell me, whether it's about the quality of a product or the fulfillment of a promise, then communication just collapses.
It becomes impossible.
Utterly. Lying is like introducing a systemic virus into that operating system. It forces all of us into this constant state of hypervigilance and skepticism.
So is the idea here, from this strict view, that even a single lie can poison the entire well of language?
Essentially, yes, that's the argument. If we accept lying as a casual, functional tool, then every piece of advice, every contract, every statement requires independent, time-consuming verification.
The cognitive load of that would be
Unbearable. Imagine if you had to fact-check everything your doctor, your mechanic, or your partner told you. Society would grind to an immediate halt.
So lying at scale isn't just a personal failing.
No, it's a profound act of social sabotage. It destroys the shared reality we need to build anything together. It's like debasing the currency of human connection.
Okay, that makes perfect sense for trust. But let's look at the second pillar, respect. This feels like it moves beyond just function and into fundamental ethics.
Precisely. Telling the truth respects other people by treating them as fully autonomous agents, as people capable of handling reality, however difficult that reality might be.
Whereas lying,
The act of lying inherently treats the recipient not as an equal partner, but as a tool, something to be managed or manipulated.
can you give us a detailed example of that? How even a well-intentioned lie can strip a person of their agency?
Okay, sure. Imagine a scenario where a wealthy family member believes the truth would stress out the recipient, so they lie to a young person about a large inheritance. They say the funds are tied up for a year when really they're available immediately.
Okay, so they think they're being protective.
They feel protective, yes, but they have actively stripped that young person of the agency to make major life choices right now.
Because they're operating on false information.
Exactly. The young person might forego a crucial educational opportunity, or take on debt unnecessarily, or accept a stressful job they hate all based on a fabricated reality created by the deceiver. By creating that false picture of reality, the deceiver forces the recipient to unknowingly act within the confines of the deceiver's preferred plan. That loss of agency, that's the ethical violation in every lie.
That's powerful. And it brings us directly to the third point, responsibility. If I lie to you, I'm implicitly taking on the responsibility for the decisions you make based on my lie.
Yes, truth enables people to be responsible, informed actors in their own lives. Lies actively strip that away. If I tell you that my high-risk investment plan is a sure thing, and you lose your retirement savings, I haven't just misled you. I have robbed you of the fundamental responsibility to analyze risk and make an informed choice for yourself. I've manufactured an unknowable, false reality for you to navigate, and then I try to evade responsibility when that reality inevitably collapses.
Well, what about contexts where we kind of accept a certain level of, let's call it performative untruth, like in marketing or political campaigning? Don't those contexts erode this idea of responsibility?
That's a critical pushback, and it's true. We do live in environments where information is strategically filtered. But even there, the law and general ethics try to set boundaries, right? There are prohibitions against fraud, requirements for disclosures.
Sure.
What our sources remind us is that when we accept performative untruth as normal, we just raise the cognitive load on everyone else. We force everyone to become hyper-skeptical analysts who have to assume bad faith.
And that just degrades the whole system.
It degrades the efficiency and the goodwill of the entire system. We lose the capacity for simple trust.
Which brings us back to the start.
Exactly.
Okay, so the final argument is about character. This is the inner dimension of truth, the architecture of the self.
Right. And the source notes here are really insightful, I think. Habitual lying is deeply corrosive. It's a key psychological nugget. Lying demands immense internal effort.
You mean just keeping the story straight?
Yes. You have to remember the truth, remember the lie you told, remember who you told which lie to, and you have to constantly monitor the situation to prevent being found out.
It sounds exhausting.
It creates this psychological web of deceit where your mind is constantly juggling multiple realities.
That's a great analogy. And what's the psychological toll of that?
It manifests as this profound instability. The more you lie, the more you decouple your internal identity from your external reality. Even if the outside world never catches the lie, you know that the image you project, the successful, on-time, stress-free person, is a fabrication. And this internal split, between the person you pretend to be and the person who knows the lies, it just eats away at your core identity. It leads to higher levels of anxiety, stress, and eventual moral fatigue.
Whereas truthfulness.
Truthfulness signals reliability. It signals maturity. It confirms you are grounded in a single reality and therefore you are reliably navigable by other people. It's about the architectural integrity of your own self.
So when we put all four pillars together, trust, respect, responsibility, and character, it creates this incredibly strong moral intuition that lying is dangerous.
And that truth is an essential foundational moral duty.
And this intuition is so powerful that it leads us to the most uncompromising philosophical stance on the whole matter.
Yes, what we're calling the strict view. The conclusion held by powerful moral traditions, particularly the deontologists, which is the assertion that we should never lie, not even once.
Not even once.
Because the duty to truth precedes any possible calculation of consequences.
Okay, let's really define this strict position. This is the heart of deontology, right?
Yep.
Duty-based ethics.
That's right. The strict view holds that lying is always and inherently wrong, regardless of the consequences that might follow from telling the truth. The focus is purely on the moral quality of the act itself.
Not the outcome.
The outcome is irrelevant to the morality of the act. This stance is concerned, above all else, with preserving the integrity and universality of moral duty.
Why is that so important to them?
The core logic is this. If you permit the circumstances or the outcome to justify a lie, you invalidate the entire concept of moral law. It all falls apart. If lying is sometimes right based on context, then every moral rule becomes subjective and contingent.
So the argument isn't just about my relationship with you, it's about preserving the general possibility of universal moral principles existing at all.
Precisely. They argue that lying invalidates the very mechanism of promises and statements having universal meaning. We can look to the philosopher Immanuel Kant here. He used what he called the categorical imperative.
Right.
He asked, what if the principle behind my action was universalized? He challenged the liar to consider. What if everyone acted according to the maxim, I will lie when it is convenient?
Well, words would become meaningless.
Exactly. Communication would cease to function, making the principle of lying self-defeating, and therefore universally wrong. The moral law has to be one that all rational beings can consistently will to become universal law.
So that brings us back to the two core philosophical reasons for this absolute ban. The first is undermining trust, which we've covered.
Right, the collapsing of the currency of truth.
And the second is using people.
Which reinforces the duty even further. When you use a lie to influence someone, you force them to operate based on a fiction, essentially serving your hidden, private agenda. Even if that agenda is protective, the act is inherently manipulative.
And to the strict moralist, manipulation is always a profound disrespect of human autonomy.
Always. It's a refusal to let them occupy the same plane of reality as you.
This adherence to duty leads to a really interesting argument about uncontrollable outcomes. This is their primary defense for not worrying about consequences.
It's a highly rational, principled stance. The strict moralist argues that human beings are fundamentally incapable of perfectly predicting the chaotic, long-term consequences of any action.
The chaos of consequences.
Exactly. A lie you tell today to save a life might, in 3 years, unravel and lead to a far worse catastrophe you never foresaw. Maybe the person you saved goes on to cause far greater harm. Because we can never guarantee a perfect outcome, we must not use the outcome as our justification.
So if we can never fully know the cascade of events, we shouldn't even try to do the math.
Don't even try.
We should just focus on the one thing we can control.
Which is the moral correctness of our own act. Telling the truth is always morally correct because it honors duty and the integrity of communication. You cannot be held morally responsible for the unforeseen, often chaotic consequences that follow the truth, even if they're harsh.
But you are responsible for the lie.
You are absolutely always responsible for the deliberate violation of duty that lying represents. It removes moral accountability from the messy realm of prediction and places it firmly in the stable realm of duty.
But this position, it faces the absolute hardest test case. The one that makes people recoil in immediate moral panic.
The murderer at the door.
The violent person at the door, asking if their intended victim is hiding inside. The immediate, predictable consequence of telling the truth is murder.
And this is the critical moment. This is where that deontological purity is truly, truly tested. And the strict position makes its most demanding claim right here.
Which is,
according to this view, rooted in the preservation of moral law, you must not utter a direct falsehood. The duty to truth is non-negotiable, even when faced with murderous intent.
So the rationale, I have to ask again, why prioritize a philosophical duty over a human life?
The deontological rationale is complex, but it's consistent. The argument is, you cannot engage in a moral violation lying to prevent a consequence that is ultimately the murderer's moral responsibility.
So you're not responsible for the murder.
The idea is that by lying, you enter into the moral transaction. You soil your own moral integrity by violating a universal duty. The moral act of murder belongs solely to the murderer. The moral act of truth or falsehood belongs solely to you. You are responsible only for the integrity of your own actions.
Okay, so if I can't lie, what can I do? What are the acceptable maneuvers here?
The strict view allows for actions that avoid active falsehood. You are permitted to stay completely silent. You can refuse to answer by stating a moral objection. You could try to change the subject or stall for time.
Anything but a direct lie.
Anything but an act of falsehood. The core idea is that you must preserve the sanctuary of your own speech.
And this is why the sources acknowledge that so many people find this stance morally cold.
Or unbearably abstract.
Yeah. It seems to prioritize an abstract principle, the integrity of language, over the concrete, immediate imperative to save a life. It forces you to ask, is the integrity of language really more important than the integrity of a human body?
And for many, that's an unanswerable ethical conflict. It really highlights the limitations of a purely duty-based ethics when it's faced with catastrophic outcomes.
So that intense moral conflict is precisely the void that the other side, the flexible view, steps in to address.
Exactly. This approach is rooted firmly in consequentialist ethics, judging the morality of an act not by the act itself, but by the expected outcome.
So while the deontologists look inward at duty, the consequentialists are looking outward at the impact.
Right. They're trying to measure the total amount of good or harm caused. This approach acknowledges the immense value of truth, but argues forcefully that truth is not a standalone, infinite moral value that automatically trumps everything else.
It's one value among many.
Absolutely. It shifts the focus to a broader weighing of outcomes, a kind of moral calculus that demands we consider the whole picture. Truth is essential, but what happens when it collides with protecting life?
Or preventing serious harm.
Or respecting privacy, or avoiding unnecessary psychological cruelty. When these values clash violently with the duty to tell the truth, the flexible view says we have to choose the outcome that maximizes human flourishing and minimizes suffering.
The central premise, then, is that lying can, in extreme circumstances, be the lesser evil.
The lesser evil. It's not something to celebrate. It's a difficult, painful choice that's tolerated as a necessary deviation from the default rule in order to achieve a higher moral good.
And the sources give clear examples of this.
They do. Hiding people from persecution is probably the most potent historical example. Think of people sheltering Jews or political dissidents during autocratic regimes.
Right.
A person lying to the authorities in that situation was actively violating the duty to truth, but they were upholding the paramount duties to life, justice, and human dignity. The moral cost of a lie is profoundly negligible compared to the catastrophe of telling the truth.
And this view provides a much more intuitive and, frankly, emotionally resonant answer to the murderer at the door problem.
Oh, absolutely. The moral cost of enabling a murder by telling the truth is objectively and foreseeably far greater than the moral cost of uttering a lie to save a life. The lie becomes a necessary shield, a moral tool deployed to prevent a tragedy.
But the calculus extends beyond just physical harm. The sources bring up a really nuanced scenario.
Yes. Shielding a person in crisis from a truth they literally cannot yet survive hearing.
This is an important expansion of the concept of harm.
It is. It moves the justification from physical protection to profound psychological stewardship. Imagine someone has just received a devastating diagnosis, is recovering from major surgery, and is also just learning of a family tragedy. They're in an extreme state of mental and physical fragility.
Oh.
Now, if you possess a final devastating truth about their situation, maybe news of financial ruin, the flexible view suggests that delivering that truth immediately, knowing it could trigger a complete psychological collapse or even a life-threatening physical response.
That would be an act of cruelty.
It would constitute unnecessary cruelty. The temporary withholding, the gentle deception about their immediate future is an act of stewardship. It buys them necessary time and space to stabilize so they can receive the truth when they have the psychological resources to process it.
That distinction is crucial. It changes the justification from "this lie makes me feel better" to This lie prevents a severe, foreseeable catastrophe.
Right. The lie must actively serve a greater, clearly defined moral value.
Which brings us to the crucial caveat.
The source material is very clear on this. The flexible view is not a license for convenience.
Yeah, this isn't about lying because it's easier than dealing with a tough situation.
No. If you use this sophisticated ethical framework to justify being late and blaming traffic, you've committed what philosophers call a category error. The stakes just don't match the justification.
So the burden of proof is really high.
Extremely high. It's reserved specifically for those extreme cases where telling the truth would actively and demonstrably betray a deeper, universally recognized moral obligation, like preserving life or justice.
So the test for the flexible view is actually complex and demanding. It's not the easy way out.
Not at all. It requires you to accurately calculate the immediate and likely long-term consequences of both the truth and the lie, and then choose the path that results in the least overall harm. It's morally humane, but ethically very rigorous.
Okay, so having wrestled with these philosophical hammer tests, life and death, duty versus consequence, we have to move back down to the social level.
Back to reality.
Right. To the seemingly mundane yet morally complex world of white lies. This is where most of us engage in casual deception.
Indeed. We use them constantly, often automatically. It's just part of our social programming. The classic examples are universal.
You look great.
You look great. Or the automatic response of, I'm fine, when someone asks how you're doing, even if you're profoundly hurting inside.
And we defend these lies, don't we? We say they're polite or kind.
Socially necessary.
Yeah, they're the social sugarcoating that prevents unnecessary awkwardness or conflict. The oil in the machinery of quick, daily interactions.
But here's where it gets really interesting, because we have to move beyond that surface justification and analyze the true motivation behind the lie. The core question that dictates the morality of a white lie is this: are we protecting them from gratuitous, unhelpful pain? Or are we protecting ourselves from immediate discomfort, conflict, or the embarrassment of just having to hold an awkward silence?
That distinction is the moral fulcrum. If I tell my friend the dress looks great, is it because I genuinely believe the pain of hearing the truth 5 minutes before her big event is unhelpful? That might be protective.
It could be.
Or is it because I simply don't want to deal with the inevitable drama, the tears, the delay that the truth would provoke? So often, white lies are primarily acts of self-preservation disguised as kindness.
And that self-protection motive is where the long-term danger lies. This is where we get into pattern and trust erosion.
Right.
Our source material warns that while a single, isolated lie to prevent a disaster might be justifiable, a pattern of small convenience lies fundamentally eats away at authenticity and trust over time.
So if I'm constantly lying about small things, what I think of your new haircut, why I was away, you as my friend, you subconsciously register me as unreliable.
Exactly. Even if you can't pinpoint the specifics, you just know that what I present is never the full, messy truth. I'm teaching you that I can't be trusted with minor truths, which makes trusting me with major truths almost impossible.
And the impact of this is highly dependent on the relationship level, right?
Oh, completely. In deep, committed, intimate relationships, a marriage, family, profound friendships, constant white lies actively prevent real closeness. True intimacy requires vulnerability.
And vulnerability requires honesty about the hard stuff.
It requires the capacity to share difficult, uncomfortable truths. If you always default to, I'm fine, you deny your loved ones the chance to actually know you, to support you, to help you bear the weight of your reality. The relationship just exists in this kind of emotional isolation chamber built on pleasant lies.
But the rules change drastically in casual interactions.
Completely. With a service worker, a casual acquaintance, or in a professional setting, some social sugarcoating might be harmless or even helpful. We don't owe every person the radical, vulnerable honesty we owe our closest circle.
Yeah.
In a workplace, for instance, a manager might be justified in telling a small, polite lie about why a meeting was canceled, rather than revealing highly disruptive, sensitive internal politics to the whole team.
We see that a lot in professional contexts, don't we? Managers soften or withhold critical feedback to avoid conflict, thinking they're being kind.
They do, but in doing so, they actively inhibit the employee's growth. And over time, that employee realizes they can't trust their manager to give them reality. They create a culture of artificial harmony where real feedback is absent, and that ultimately hurts everyone's performance.
So the ultimate test for the white lie, as the sources present it, is to examine your intent rigorously.
Yes. Is the lie serving love and respect? Is it prioritizing the well-being, the long-term dignity, the growth of the other person?
Or is it serving avoidance and fear?
The fear of conflict, the fear of exposure, the avoidance of the personal effort required to deliver the truth kindly? If it's the latter, even a small lie is an ethical drift.
Okay, so we've established that the moral choice is rarely a simple, strict dichotomy of lie versus full truth.
No, not at all. Moral life happens in the gray zone. And the subtle options there often test our integrity just as much as a direct lie.
Absolutely. The gray zone is defined by omissions, really, more than active commissions of falsehoods.
That's a great way to put it.
So the first subtle option is simply remaining silent, or maybe changing the subject entirely.
These are tools that honor our need for boundaries, right? They avoid creating a falsehood so they don't violate that strict moral duty.
Or we can give a partial answer. Or maybe delay the truth until the moment is right.
Staging the truth. This acknowledges that the truth may be necessary, but context and timing are essential parts of ethical delivery. A sudden, traumatic truth delivered at the wrong time just transforms the truth into a weapon.
This is so critical because it brings in the concept of the right to privacy versus obligation. We have to be really firm about this. Truth-telling should not be confused with forced total disclosure. We are not obligated to share everything we know about ourselves or others.
No, we're not. People have a right to privacy about their finances, their health, their personal history, and we have a corresponding right not to answer intrusive or inappropriate questions.
So if a stranger asks about my medical history, I don't owe them the full, unvarnished truth.
Not at all. Politely declining, setting a clear boundary, or redirecting the conversation is not lying. It's asserting a boundary of respect and self-protection. You're maintaining silence, which is ethically distinct from uttering a known falsehood.
However, this gray zone contains one of the most insidious forms of deception, I think, especially for a sophisticated audience.
Half-truth.
The danger of half-truths, the art of strategic ambiguity and calculated framing. People tell a fragment of the truth or structure their answer so ambiguously that others will inevitably draw the wrong conclusion.
And the speaker retains that comforting yet corrosive feeling of being technically honest.
Right.
This is so valuable in legal or political contexts where plausible deniability is everything. The internal dialogue is, well, I didn't actually say the project was complete. I just said we hit our milestone targets and they drew their own conclusion.
It's a rhetorical device to evade accountability.
It is. It functions as manipulation because the intention is clearly deceptive, even if the words themselves are defensible in a vacuum. The speaker is trading on the listener's willingness to infer, knowing full well that inference is wrong.
So this requires us, once again, to apply a litmus test.
Yes, you have to look at intention plus effect. Are we genuinely honoring privacy and timing by being limited in our disclosure? Or are we trying to escape responsibility by hiding behind technicalities and leading the listener down a false path?
The moment you intentionally manipulate the listener's understanding, regardless of your precise wording,
you've crossed the moral threshold into deception. The ethical challenge in the gray zone is recognizing that manipulative silence or strategic partiality can be just as damaging to trust as a direct lie, even though it provides a psychological escape hatch for the deceiver.
Honesty isn't just about the words you use.
No, it's about the reality you intentionally construct for other people.
Okay, so if we accept that truth is the default, and lies are only for extreme, rare cases, then the vast majority of our moral challenge is in the delivery.
The delivery of necessary, uncomfortable truths. We need to shift focus from what is said to how and when it is said. Truth-telling is a refined skill. It involves content, timing, and profound emotional sensitivity.
It really is an art form. We could even call it the surgical application of truth.
I like that.
A truth, like a scalpel, can be used to excise something harmful and promote healing, or it can be used carelessly to inflict needless, profound injury. We have to contrast the two common methods of delivering a painful truth.
Okay, so let's analyze method one. The cruel, blunt delivery.
We all know this person.
We do. This is the delivery method favored by those who use honesty as a shield for aggression. The person delivers bad news without preamble, without empathy, often timing it for maximum disruption in a public or unprepared moment.
When truth is delivered this way, it's just a weapon. The person shields themselves with that phrase, "I'm just being honest."
I'm just telling it like it is.
Right. But the honesty is a pretense. The real goal is often to establish dominance or alleviate their own discomfort or just inflict pain under the guise of virtue.
That's the key. When truth is used as a weapon, the focus shifts entirely from serving the recipient's growth to serving the speaker's sense of self-righteousness or power. It's an act of emotional violence disguised as authenticity.
Now, let's contrast that with method 2, the gentle way.
Okay.
The same painful truth is delivered, but the timing is carefully considered. In private, when the recipient is stable, with a strong framework of care and support, the language is designed to show respect and empathy.
The emphasis here is on partnership and recovery, not judgment. The painful content is paired with resources or context or a pathway forward. For example, delivering a painful work critique immediately followed by a plan for retraining and support.
The goal is integration and growth, not injury.
Right. This approach shows profound respect for the other person's ability to process and a desire to help them integrate the truth so they can grow or heal. The factual truth is identical in both methods, but the moral valence of the act is fundamentally different. One destroys, the other builds.
And this leads us to the critical balance point, the synthesis of this entire discussion about communication. We have to learn to hold truth and compassion together.
The rule has to be clear. Truth without compassion can become a weapon. It's destructive, isolating, and often morally aggressive.
But on the other side,
compassion without truth can become a sweet illusion. It prevents necessary change, blocks growth, and leaves the person in a state of comfortable but ultimately dangerous denial.
The ultimate art of ethical communication, then, is successfully balancing reality and dignity in one hand.
Exactly. You communicate reality, the truth, but you do it with the explicit goal of helping the other person process, grow, or heal. That's compassion. And it requires moral maturity, emotional intelligence, and crucially, self-restraint from the ego gratification of just being the honest one.
We spend all this time analyzing communication with others, but now we have to pivot.
Entirely inward, yes. We have to address what is arguably the deepest and most persistent moral task we face: confronting self-deception.
If lying to others damages relationships and society, then lying to ourselves, that damages the core engine of our personality.
It does. It's a defense mechanism we all employ, often unconsciously, as a psychological shield to manage immediate pain.
And the examples are universal.
Because self-deception is the mechanism of denial. We tell ourselves we're fine when we are genuinely struggling, because admitting the depth of the struggle, admitting vulnerability, requires confronting pain and the realization that change is required.
Or look at conflict. We instinctively refuse to admit our own role in a problem. We use what psychologists call motivated reasoning to gather only the evidence that proves we are the innocent victim.
That it's always the other person's fault or the circumstance's fault. We subconsciously edit the narrative to maintain our preferred self-image.
That's a perfect encapsulation of it. It's the brain's ability to use its intellect not to find objective truth, but to justify a predetermined conclusion.
Specifically, the conclusion that serves our immediate emotional comfort or protects our ego from shame.
We filter evidence, maximize the mistakes of others, minimize our own failings,
and continuously edit our memories to create a personalized historical account that is far kinder than reality.
Let's analyze the function of this. Why do we maintain these internal lies? The source is clear. It protects us from immediate pain.
If I truly confront how severely things are failing in my career, or how much I messed up a crucial relationship, the psychic cost, the shame, the guilt is high. The self-lie provides an immediate psychological shelter, a form of temporary moral anesthesia.
It lets us function day to day without collapse.
But here is the massive, devastating long-term consequence. In the long run, self-deception actively and relentlessly blocks growth and healing.
Because you can't solve a problem you refuse to acknowledge exists.
You can't. You can't improve a skill you pretend you've already mastered. You can't heal a wound you are actively pretending is just a minor scratch.
So it creates a permanent state of arrested development. If your internal story always places you as the faultless victim, you're incapable of learning from experience.
You just repeat the same errors because the blame is always externalized. It never leads to internal correction. Your external actions become delusional because they're rooted in a false map of your own internal world.
The conclusion, then, is that facing the truth about yourself, about your flaws, your contributions to conflict, your deepest fears, is uncomfortable. It requires immense internal fortitude.
It is often far more painful than telling a white lie to a friend. But that very pain is the price of admission to maturity and self-possession.
So we can conclude that learning not to lie to ourselves, at least not forever,
Yeah.
is one of the deepest and most consistent moral tasks we face.
It's the prerequisite for any ethical conduct toward anyone else, because if you are constantly deceiving yourself, every external interaction you have is built on a shaky, unreal foundation.
Okay, we have covered so much ground. The strict absolutists, the flexible consequentialists, the politics of white lies, the challenge of internal honesty.
We've seen that duty is crucial, but so is compassion, and self-awareness is the bedrock of it all.
So we need to create a balanced middle path, a framework that integrates all these lessons and recognizes that life demands ethical nuance, not just rigid rules. We need actionable principles for you, the learner, to follow.
We propose 5 components for this nuanced approach. Number 1.
Truth is the default.
This is the anchor. Acknowledge that a healthy life, strong relationships, and a functional society all rely on general honesty. Therefore, lying must be rare, serious, and treated as a moral exception, not a casual tool.
Number 2, motives matter.
You have to differentiate clearly between lying to protect your ego or your momentary comfort, the convenience lie, and lying with the intention to save a life or prevent a severe injustice. If the lie primarily serves to reduce your own fear or effort, it is almost always wrong.
Number 3, consequences matter in extreme cases.
Except that in rare, extreme situations, severe injustice, imminent harm lie may be the more compassionate and just option. This uses the flexible view, but requires the stakes to be genuinely life-altering, not just slightly inconvenient.
4, alternatives first.
Before you default to a lie, you must exhaust every other alternative in the gray zone. Can you stay silent? Can you redirect the conversation? Can you speak a limited but non-harmful truth? A lie should only be deployed when these alternatives have failed and a catastrophic consequence looms.
And finally, number 5. This feels like the most important one.
Radical honesty with self. Even if you choose to lie to others in that rare, extreme case, you must never lie to yourself about why you do it or what it cost. Own your action internally. Be prepared to take responsibility for the damaged trust if and when the lie is exposed.
This framework moves us away from philosophical extremism and toward practical moral wisdom. It places the burden of proof squarely on the person contemplating the lie.
It requires high justification, not convenience.
Let's quickly run our 3 initial scenarios through this framework just to see how it works in practice.
Great idea.
The murderer at the door.
That's clearly addressed by component 3. Consequences matter in extreme cases. A lie is justified because protecting life is a higher moral imperative than the abstract duty to truth in that catastrophic context. The lie is a last resort protective shield.
Okay. The friend asking about their appearance right before a crucial event.
That falls under component 2, motives matter, and 4, alternatives first. The middle path suggests seeking a nuanced, non-deceptive redirection like praising their confidence, or an accessory rather than an outright lie. A small reassurance may be warranted if the true motive is to prevent self-sabotage, but it's a choice made carefully, not casually.
And the convenience lie blaming traffic.
That is unequivocally failed by this framework. It violates component 1, truth is the default, and 2, motives matter. It's pure ego protection. The alternatives, like admitting your mistake and apologizing, are simple and cause minimal moral harm. That lie is a clear moral failure of character. It should be avoided entirely.
So we've reached the conclusion of our deep dive into the moral dilemma of truth and deception. Should we always tell the truth, or is lying sometimes justified?
We have to reiterate that we should take truth-telling as a serious, non-negotiable moral default. It's the bedrock of trust, respect, and responsibility. It should define your interactions.
But moral life is messy. It's complex. There may be rare, extreme situations, the ones that test the very limits of our moral imagination, where lying is the painful necessity that protects deeper values, like life, justice, or human dignity.
And even in those rare, justified cases, the source material gives a final, critical warning. Lying remains morally dangerous. It should never be celebrated or taken lightly. It has to be treated as a painful last resort, always carrying the risk of internal erosion and external damage to trust.
So we'll leave you with a thought to chew on as you navigate your day. If you find yourself asking, as you are about to speak, is this lie justified?
Yeah.
That question itself is a warning sign.
It is. It's a moment of ethical crisis, and you should treat it as such.
That question calls you to stop.
And to examine your true, deepest motives. Are you really protecting others from severe harm, meeting that high bar of the flexible view? Or are you simply protecting yourself from discomfort, from conflict, or from the effort of delivering a painful truth with the compassion it requires.
The ultimate goal of this deep dive isn't to provide a simple yes or no answer. The goal is to learn to skillfully honor both reality and human dignity.
In how we communicate, how we choose to stay silent, and most importantly, how we reveal ourselves to others and to ourselves.
That balance is the deep dive that continues every day.